So my name is Sheena with Rise Wellness, and this is Gene Key Contemplations with the Sacred Wild. So I am really excited to be holding this call every Wednesday from 2:22 to 3:33 Eastern Standard Time. So this is giving us a chance to really drop in with the pulse of the week, which is the Gene Key of the week. So what we're going to be using is coming from the Gene Keys calendar. One beautiful way that I invite you to get in touch with this information and use the resources available for you is by following the Gene Keys profile on Instagram or another social platform where you can access them. Because what they do is every week, and I'm going to use Instagram as the profile that I do this with, but every week on Instagram, they have in their links the option to listen to the contemplation of the week for free. So, I mean, it's only usually $2, but there is some savings there for the 6 days that it's transiting. You always will have the opportunity to listen to it as many times as you like. We may come into a place of sharing these contemplations on the Zoom calls, but ideally I would love to keep us having that as a resource so that we already have it before we come into the calls, so that we can really bounce off these contemplations around what came up, not only from reading the chapter, but also from listening to the contemplation, and then from navigating your own human journey, because the gene key that we're talking about is the one that we're actually transiting through. And so if you're not familiar with the gene keys is this incredible transmission. So these are activations, these are transmissions. And so this technology was founded by Richard Rudd during a spiritual awakening experience that he had, that for him lasted 3 days and 3 nights. And in this spiritual experience, he is said to have achieved all of the codes and to have been in a place of omniscience that could really interact with the world in a way that he's never had access to ever again after that experience, where he said he couldn't have the omniscience of seeing all. The door was still kept, ajar for him to go back, spend 7 years integrating the wisdom that his body had remembered, and then creating this book, The Gene Keys. But the Gene Keys is not a new science in that it really is this encyclopedia of putting together all of the archetypal stories that come from every lineage. With 3 planets in Sagittarius, I love jumping down the spiritual rabbit hole and from going down in so many different directions. I love, love, love everything that I've learned with the Gene Keys, because it truly is such a beautiful way of seeing all of it in one place. And for me, that's really helped me expand in my spiritual knowledge, to come into this place of my own awakening journey, to really be able to help support others that are on there. So my holistic wellness business is called Rise Wellness. I also am a spiritual teacher, Gene Keys guide, human design guide, esoteric astrologer, oracle. I love working with the tarot as well. So I love all things enlightenment. I love dabbling and communing with spirits. And just to give a little bit of a backstory on how I first got involved with the Gene Keys, for me, it was part of my soul's curriculum to just really jump down the rabbit hole. I had a pretty difficult earth walk, had experienced all kinds of traumas, beginning with my family of origin. And I pretty much came to the point where I said, enough is enough. I want to investigate every single one of my shadows and figure out what the hell is going on in there, and how can I be different? How can I do things a different way? Well, the universe heard me make that public announcement, and within 24 hours, I was onto a podcast called The Shadow Work Library, where this woman was giving contemplations on the Gene Keys. I immediately got the download. I need this book. I need to dig in. I ordered it on Amazon. I ordered it on Audible. I started reading it. I started listening to it. pretty compulsively. Again, 3 planets in Sagittarius, deep diver with spiritual teaching. And I made it a huge part of my daily devotion to not only read this information, but allow my body to somatically register it. So as I went into each gene key and each shadow, I allowed my body to have breath, sound, movement, and touch to really see what was coming up to come out. And so, that being said, this is a beautiful way of really interacting with the gene keys. We're just going to add some awareness. We're going to add a little deeper insight onto the energetics of what's going on around us and use the language of the gene keys so that we can be supported, so that we can say life is happening to us. It's never happening for us, even in the times it doesn't always feel that way. And so right now we're navigating gene key 47. This is the shadow of oppression. This is the gift of transmutation, and this is the Siddhi, or the divine essence of transfiguration. And I would go ahead and say this is one of the most magical gene keys in the entire gene keys, because this is such an alchemical metamorphosis. And this truly is what we experience when we go through our spiritual awakening. If you've done any research or listened to anything about the gene keys, you may have heard the dragonfly's genome, the story of the dragonfly's dream. And so this really gives us some context on what's happening to us. And we use the symbolism of the dragonfly to give this idea where, as a species, as a collective, we're going through these molds, we're going through these shifts, we're going through these changes, and so is the planet. The entire universe is going through this shift and this metamorphosis on a collective level. When we look at the life of the dragonfly, we're looking at species of larvae that was living in the water, swimming, until one day it gets this little intuitive hit that says, let's go up to the surface. And so after several different molds and transitions and metamorphosis that the dragonfly goes to, unbeknownst to itself, it eventually gets the intuitive hit to come out of the water. And it's when that process happens that it's just lying there on a lily pad that the sun sees this little body and something incredible happens. It unfurls its body, and as the sun shines down, these iridescent wings form. And this dragonfly that was once swimming under the water is now taking off in flight. It has an entirely different body, has an entirely different environment, has an entirely new way of living and interacting with the world. And that is what we're all going through, where some of us don't know that we're swimming in the water. Some of us have taken that jump out of the water and gotten the taste of air to say, hey, wait a second, there's a whole life outside of here. And then some of us are already flying with their wings and living in a completely different paradigm. And there's no judgment to where any of us are falling on this spectrum, because the 3D reality, this Maya, this illusion that we're part of, it is a spectrum. This H-U-E, human experience is looking full flavor, the full essence of being fully human and fully divine. And what does that feel like? Well, that moment of leaving the environment, leaving the nest, facing the discomfort can be wildly uncomfortable, even maddening for us, as we can feel like we're having these spiritual breakthroughs. And so what I'd like to do is jump us off with a meditation. And so when we're looking at the gene keys, it's important to see the big picture in all of it. So right now on a collective, we're moving through gene key 47. So again, this is the shadow of oppression, the gift of transmutation, the highest divine essence of transfiguration. So what's happening in the sky right now is this is the theme of Virgo. And so this particular gene, it's influenced by Virgo. And so what do we have going on in the sky for Virgo? We've got the new moon approaching. So the new moon is when we have this void in the sky. When we have this void, this can lead us to sometimes have anxiety, maybe fall into that void and feel uncomfortable, maybe have this desire to retreat, maybe slow down this week. We're in this crone energy. We're not feeling as expansive. We're not feeling like getting out and socializing. A lot of us are sort of retreating. Maybe we're getting a little bit more curious about reflecting on some things that have come up this month. Maybe we're journaling, we're meditating, we're getting quiet in our devotional practice. And so as this new moon energy is coming in, I just invite us to use what we know already about this gene and then take us into this Virgo new moon meditation, because this is really going to give us an opportunity to drop in using the flavor of the week. And so I did write it down, so I'm going to be reading from a script. So, good afternoon, sacred wild brothers and sisters. This is going to be about 15 minutes long. And then from there, we will have probably a minute of reflection if anything comes up to come out that you'd like to journal about. And then we'll get off into more of the contemplation on the gene keys. But I'd really like us just to arrive into this moment to really release the day thus far so that we can put our ego in the seat to the left of us and really just allow our soul to get present so that it can come into this place of service to receive. For this beautiful guided healing meditation for this Virgo new moon that's happening on September 15th, 2023, this meditation is going to be great to do today, which is a couple days before the new moon, and even good to do up until 3 days after the new moon, as we'll still be feeling its potent energy. So I invite you to get comfortable with your back fully erected if that is available for you, and your legs uncrossed if that feels in alignment. Having your palms face upwards to receive, and then gently closing down your eyes if that feels in alignment for you. Take a deep breath in through the nose, sounding and exhaling out through the mouth. And let's do that again. Taking another deep breath in through the nose. And sounding and exhaling out through the mouth. Taking another deep breath in through the nose. And sounding anything that wants to come out on your exhale. This time, taking another deep breath in through the nose, filling up your belly, up to your heart, all the way up to the top of your head, and now holding it there just for a beat. And then exhaling, letting go from your shoulders, allowing yourself to surrender deeper with the earth beneath you. As we open this space for this guided energy healing meditation for the Virgo new moon, giving gratitude for all of the elements, fire, water, air, and earth. Giving gratitude for Grandmother Moon, giving gratitude for all of our elements, giving gratitude for this Virgo energy supporting us and allowing us to understand our soul lessons, as well as the emotions that are here to support us on our new beginnings. Allowing ourselves to slowly breathe in through the nose. And as you exhale through the mouth, just feeling and tuning into, how does your breath feel in this moment? How does your body feel in this moment? How does your soul feel in this Virgo new moon energy? And now, as you take these slow and conscious breaths in through the nose, I want you to either out loud or internally ask yourself, where are you holding yourself back? Because you feel like your present self is not ready to embark on the next phase of your journey, the next new stage of your life. When I count down from 5, your ears, your third eye, and that part of your body will open up and communicate that to you. 5, 4, 3, 2, by opening the ears, opening the body, and opening the throat chakra, and allowing yourself to vocally express where you are holding yourself back. And as you express that, I want you to connect with the fragmented part of you. The part of you that decided to create that belief. Now, this could be a part of you at a certain age. This could be a part of you at a certain moment or at a certain memory. This could be a part of you in another life. Whatever is coming up to you, visualize, or whatever you're hearing, feeling, or sensing. Just allow yourself to just be and follow the intuition with no judgment, no questioning, but rather with being with the wisdom and the knowledge that your body, that your soul is communicating to you right now. Thank you. And now feeling into the space of the body, allowing whatever emotions are coming up, knowing that it is safe to allow whatever truth is here. It is safe for that part of your shadow self to express the fear, the joy, whatever emotion is there. You are safe to express that. And as I count down to 3, your body is going to share with you. Your being, your spirit is going to share with you. What do you feel is missing for you to receive, for you to accomplish, for you to be with the next stage in your life? Regardless of the chaos, the unclarity, the confusion, the happiness, the joy, whatever is there. 3, 2, 1. Your ears and that part of your body is opening up. And taking a deeper breath here, away from the mind, just allow this part of your body to express. What are you waiting for? What do you feel that you are missing? And now I want to visualize or feel that version of you and repeat after me. I now let go of this old story. I now receive that I am ready to receive this new beginning. I am ready. I am whole. And so it is. Taking deep breaths into that truth that you have claimed for your soul in that same area of your body. And just noticing how you feel. How does your body feel now that you've shifted your story? How does your body feel knowing that you have cleared that story? And as you inhale, creating more spaciousness in this part of your body, and when you exhale, just allowing that to be released and given to the earth and the moon energy now. As you allow yourself to breathe, allowing the crown of your body all the way down to your toes, showering you with these new beginnings. And as you receive to the highest consciousness for all benevolent beings, allow yourself to breathe in through your nose. And as you exhale, sounding out spaciousness, sounding out relief, sounding out lightness. And now asking your soul here, what are you ready to claim? What are you ready to receive? Away from the mind and just allowing that part of your body, allowing that part of your being to express. And may you express that out loud or internally, whatever feels right for you. Taking a deep breath in and exhaling, creating spaciousness in your being and wrapping your arms around yourself, holding yourself, saying, I am whole. I am nourished. I am okay. I am grounded. I am complete. And taking one last deep breath into your belly and into your chest, and then all the way up to the top of your head and holding it here with gratitude for this new moon. Gratitude for your soul. Gratitude for your body. Gratitude for your shadow. And exhaling out through the mouth and returning into your own natural breath. Back into this space, into this gene key contemplation with Sheena from the Sacred Wild. Bringing some movement back into your body, into your hands and your toes. And let me know what came up for you. How are you feeling? What part of you were you able to nourish, to receive, and to let go of? Letting go of these stories of perfection during this Virgo new moon to make way to receive those new beginnings that have been waiting for you to receive them. Feeling all of your parts becoming whole, returning home, feeling that sacred union within you, feeling that wholesome feeling of embodiment and the presence of love and peace. And I invite you to come back to this meditation anytime you want to work with this Virgo energy of releasing old stories that are no longer serving you. If you haven't already, you may slowly open your eyes and return back to this moment now. So I'm going to give us about 3 minutes to journal or just be in quiet contemplation and reflection of anything that came up. And from there, we are going to jump into this gene key number 47. So 3 minutes. All right. So I hope that something came up for you to reflect on, to contemplate. It's not often that we give ourselves opportunity for these sacred pauses. So even though this is a recording, I still want to have them in there just to give that little micro moment of contemplation, because that's when these epiphanies come from. That's where we reach these sudden enlightenment experiences. So Gene Key 47, I'm going to share a contemplation that is kind of a summary of this chapter that I wrote, that I think will be a great way to just sum this up without reading the chapter or reciting the contemplation from Richard Rudd, because as I said, I'll always assume that because you have access to that at some point that you will marry that contemplation with this reflection. And so, starting out with a Richard Rudd quote, the bottom line is that our oppression, the particular nuances and flavors of our suffering and karma during this lifetime, are exactly equivalent to the greatness of our inner light. Their purpose is to awaken that light. A stunning 98% of our genome is composed of what the gene keys would refer to as junk DNA, because it cannot be logically understood, and it's a large part of this 47th shadow. It's our karma stored in the collective unconscious. You see, time and space are on this continuum occurring simultaneously, even when we do not always intellectually understand this. So we created time as this unit of measure, but it's not real. Therefore, all of our ancestral wounds we're carrying are just waiting for us to tend to them. In a repressive state, these people are hopeless. This shadow provokes a kind of mental collapse where the inner oppression of the mind is overwhelmed with one's life. The pattern of oppression shows no signs of being broken, and these people give up on life at a certain time, either literally or they give up hope that their life can get better. Unable or unwilling to face their fears, they often live in quiet compromise. Reactively, these people are dogmatic and externalize their oppression by projecting it onto others. They use their minds to control the environment. With fear running rampant in our collective environment, this is an attempt to try to solidify their mental patterns in order to give them the illusion of safety. Whether the dogma is scientific or religious, it effectively freezes them. Any kind of free thinking of independence of mind or spirit in another is incredibly threatening to these people. This shadow invites us to sit with our fears. Whether it's a pet peeve or a debilitating anxiety, when you trace it down, it's always your fear of death. And it's not even real. We don't die. We change forms. We transmutate, which is the 47th gift. Catholicism concocted confession as a means to air our oppressions, but it didn't ask us to take responsibility for them, and therefore it suppressed the fears even deeper. The dilemma of this shadow is accountability. When we tend to our suffering with love and compassion, we heal within so that it's projected outside of us. It becomes transmuted. Buddha calls enlightenment the end of suffering. And it is, because we spend all this time fearing death, forgetting that we're immortal beings. There is no need to suffer. We need to surrender to a power greater than us who always has our back. Faith and fear cannot exist simultaneously. If you're afraid, trust more, surrender deeper. The greatest story of transfiguration comes to us from the resurrection and ascension of Yeshua, or Jesus. He entered into hell by facing the fears of the collective unconscious and sacrificing himself to them. In Tibet, these beings are known as rainbow bodies, masters who achieved the same siddhi. All it took was facing their shadows and surrendering with love and sacrifice. The good news is there's no need to suffer anymore. Death is not real. At some point, we will leave our physical bodies behind, but matter cannot be created nor destroyed. It simply changes form. For anyone on a spiritual path who's ever lost a loved one, they know all too well that their presence lives on. People often equate a spiritual awakening as some soft and fluffy cloud that we land on, full of rainbows and butterflies. But really, it's the unbearable weight of our collective fear sitting on our shoulders. It's everything we thought we knew turned upside down. It is the dark night of the soul, and it's found here in this shadow. It is by fully sitting with the discomfort of our greatest traumas that we illuminate the gifts in them that they are here to teach us. As Cynthia Ocelli says, for a seed to achieve its greatest expression, it must come completely undone. The shell cracks, its insides come out, and everything changes. For someone who doesn't understand growth, it would look like complete destruction. During the collective awakening, our environment is currently under The contrast between polarities may feel unbearable at times. This gene invites you to connect with someone that you can trust to share about your experiences. Our greatest challenges offer us our greatest salvation. Shame cannot exist around love, compassion, and belonging. So no matter how your egoic mind has deemed itself unlovable in this lifetime, your light comes from actually giving that part of yourself more love and allowing others to love it too. When we remove shame, all that's left is love. Ooh, excuse me. So, let me just take it. So many things that come out regarding this gene. But in the spirit of this call, since what we were going to be doing was contemplating the stories, the wisdom around these genes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the wisdom story from the Oracle deck, The 64 Faces of Awakening. This is by Dr. Rosie Aronson, and she is the creator of the Dream Arc on the Gene Keys. So this is her deck that looks at all the 64 genes and gives a story to go along with them, showing the alchemical process of each gene. And so in the spirit of this call, I've decided I'm going to go ahead and share that on this one, as well as anything that comes up to come out in regards to it. So this is the imagery here. Get the light on it, but so you can kind of see some of the symbols in there for transmutation. And it starts off with a Richard Rudd quote that says, "The only way to transcend suffering is to move more deeply into it, embracing every feeling and event that comes to you." This is the programming partner of Gene Key 22, which is the shadow of dishonor, the gift of graciousness, and the divine essence of grace. As a collective, we are all moving through this passage, and it is very much felt this week. And here we go with the wisdom story. I had a recurring nightmare as a child. It always ended with a bearded man hovering over me with a giant blade as I guarded something behind my back. I always woke up screaming just before the blade touched my chest. My father was a weak and quiet man. He didn't speak of his oppressive family past or believe in much of anything. My mother was a woman who religiously embraced the dogma of the church. Convinced a negative entity was attached to her daughter, she dragged me to church. For years, I prayed for forgiveness and to be rid of the evil, but the nightmare only intensified. By the time I was a young woman, I avoided sleep at all costs. One night, I was so overcome with hopelessness that I broke down in front of my father, finally sharing the dream with him. He became strangely curious, as if he needed to know more. His surprising response awakened a curiosity, a courage in me. That night, I willingly went to sleep. Though I still awoke before the night fell, I was able to retrieve more information. The next night, the same thing happened. Then the next. It got to a point where I could enter the dream at will, like a sleuth, always leaving seconds before my murder. My father hungered for each new detail to come through. It was as if the two of us were assembling pieces from an ancient puzzle. One night, I detected faint lettering on the bearded man's belt. I drew the 3 letters from my father. He ran to his room and rushed back with an old book full of Nordic symbols, given to him by the grandfather he'd never mentioned. Immediately, we saw the meaning of the 3 symbols: journey, gift, and joy. I'd never seen my father's eyes glow like that. I couldn't wait to go to sleep that night. This time, I let the dagger plunge into my heart. There was no blood, no pain, just radiant light filling my chest. Turning to face what I'd been protecting all these years, I saw a treasure box overflowing with jewels. The bearded man reappeared, this time beaming with kindness. Instead of a sword, he held a picture of my father as a child in his hand. He said, "Tell your father I ask for his forgiveness. Tell him I love him." My father and I were never the same after that. Our ancestral relations strengthened, healed, and transformed us. Today, there's nothing I'm not willing to see or feel. I uncover treasure after treasure. My gift to you. I'm here to ask you to move towards that which terrifies you. You may think you have a fixed identity, but you don't. You are forever changing. You are designed to bump up against limitations and then to dissolve into something else. Transmutation is the key to your evolution. I come when it's time to hold nothing back, to embrace everything, and to live dangerously. Release all definitions of who you are and what you are capable of. Get comfortable with fear. Willingly take the lid off Pandora's box. If you truly want to transcend your suffering, move deeply into it. Surrender. You can make a quantum leap at any moment, and your true purpose will be revealed. Questions for contemplation. Have you given up on your life? Do you sometimes feel like no matter what you do, your life won't get any better? So if you have a journal, I invite you to think on that. I'll give it a little bit of time for each of the questions. So this first part, again, have you given up on your life? Do you sometimes feel like no matter what you do, your life won't get better? What are the fears you refuse to face or deal with? Do you feel best when you're mentally certain about something? Do you ever feel oppressed by your own mind? Is it hard to relate to people who think differently than you? Think of something that truly scares you. Move towards it with a symbolic or creative act. Reflect on a time in your life you experienced a transmutation. And so, in the spirit of authenticity, I am going to share a contemplation, a reflection that I have about this gene and how it's showed up in my life, in case that through my personal reflection, you might be able to see how this gene can manifest or what it might be felt or experienced like. Now, of course, this is just my truth. There's no capital T to my truth. This is simply my own emotional experience. And so, I have always had a deep connection with my mystical side, with my spiritual gifts. And I have allowed them in recent years to really guide me. And I've allowed life to be moved through me in the past few years. And sometimes this can feel really in alignment and easy and flowy. And sometimes this can feel really hard. And in all of it, I just show up to be present with what is, just reminding myself the most sacred thing, what is. I am lucky enough to have cultivated a really beautiful partnership, and one that's taken a lot of work to have. And so transmutation, what I've been thinking about this week, is something that's so interesting that I can't even fully intellectualize. And it lives in this sweet paradox, which is how I know that I'm in some nutrient dense, rich material to share. At least I think so. And so, so what I will say is my partner and I hold space for some medicine ceremonies and different events and retreats that happened on the land, that happened here on the land. And so one that was interesting for me as it relates, as it will come back down to this week, is we were expecting to have, or we did have, a grandfather peyote medicine ceremony last weekend. And this was brought in by the Native American church. And this was our second time having this ceremony with this church on our land. Now, I come from Massachusetts. I have a witch wound that I have come into my spiritual awakening, into the genetic memory of the suppression of the divine feminine that's been experienced not only in my lifetime, but in the lives of the people that have come before me. I have my own ways of really tapping into this wisdom and sometimes these fears. Now, I had a hard time sitting in the peyote ceremony last time that we had it on the land, and I allowed myself to get really curious about everything that was coming up. And I was able to create a whole victim story on why I didn't align with this ceremony. I could see the oppression in my psyche, and I could see all the parts of me that didn't feel safe, that didn't feel like I could be in my fullest expression, that were arguing inside with this patriarchy. So what was happening in my first time sitting with this grandfather medicine is there was this collective wound around patriarchy that was coming up in my system, that several months ago during this ceremony last year, I could look at my own story around this patriarchy and use that for medicine for integration after the circle. Well, 7 months later, I think it's, or maybe 10 months later, we invite in another grandfather medicine ceremony, same church, same traditions. This time, they want to erect a teepee. So now there is another statement of this ceremony that actually gets put up about a month before the medicine ceremony is expected to start. In this initiation of this teepee, the women are invited to bless the teepee. We have a community day with a community sweat lodge experience, and people are invited just to come in and pay homage and reverence to this teepee, because we know that in a month's time, we're going to be sitting with this medicine together. So my body starts having a reaction to this teepee. I'm seeing it outside in the yard, and I'm having an aversion to it that I can't really articulate, can't fully understand where it's coming up in my body. But all I can say is that this is true for me, that this doesn't feel safe. This doesn't feel comfortable. There's something here. So luckily, I had a month to really get curious about what was coming up to come out. And there was a lot that I could contend with, where I could see this oppression of where the divine feminine has been suppressed in traditional ceremonies. And I could also play in the paradox that my beloved is very called and aligned with this medicine, and it does wonderful things for him. And I want to support my partner having this experience without the infiltration of my own criticism, with my own judgment, with my own ancestral karma that was somehow feeling to be tied with this ceremony. So I had a lot of conflicting things coming up, where I said I could call off the whole ceremony. I could say, this doesn't feel good, we're not doing it. But I could notice that doesn't feel good in my body. What felt good in my body was to be discerning, to say, I love this ceremony for you. I love this ceremony for our community and for everyone that gets to sit with this medicine in this traditional setting and is really aligned and supported by that. I'm so happy for people to have that experience. And I decided it was not in my highest alignment. My nervous system was not supporting a traditional medicine ceremony. Because when I got curious about what came up for me several months back, I could be the oppressor. I could be the oppressed. I could have all this victim narrative around what was coming up, or I could just be with the fact that there's a part of me that doesn't feel safe here. And I'm going to do something radical. And I'm going to say, I'm going to put my needs and my nervous system over the opinions and judgments of everybody else. And I risk disappointing my partner. And I risk disappointing the medicine men and all the people traveling and coming to this ceremony. And I did disappoint them. And I did let them down. And I did have to sit with that experience of what it was like to disappoint others, but not to betray myself. And so that was the gift of transmutation in this process for me, was saying, I have a victim story. I first worked through it, breath, sound, movement, touch, to say, how is this system of patriarchy that's being triggered right now, how am I supporting the patriarchy within me, or how am I dismantling it? How am I living in my full expression, or how am I suppressing something that's here? And so for me, if I sat in that ceremony, I would have betrayed myself, because I had too many intuitive nudges that say, Sheena, your soul does not feel safe here. And you don't have to go down the rabbit hole and detect what that is. Because for me, my soul curriculum at that moment was my boundaries. And that's how grandfather medicine was coming through to me. I want you to respect your boundaries. I want you to choose what is worth preserving and what's worth departing and leaving behind. And as a collective, that's what we're all going through right now. When we go through their spiritual awakening, we attain this golden thread. And with this golden thread, we get to go back into the old archetypal stories of his story. And we can weave into it her story and our story. And we can say, this part from the past, I will preserve this. And this part has got to go. I will not preserve this. And after I said no to the ceremony, the universe gifted me in so many incredible ways that I had an unbelievable enlightening experience. And I didn't sit with the medicine there. And I didn't compromise my health and well-being by putting myself into a situation that, for whatever reason, I didn't feel comfortable with. And so there are sometimes, like this story can reflect on, sometimes we have hard things and we move into them. And for me, that wasn't moving into the ceremony. The hard thing I was moving into was my boundaries, was asserting myself to say, and at the end, what I got to finally realize was that I do follow a tradition of this beautiful grandfather medicine, but it's not that tradition. And when I got to be curious and give myself the space to really be with myself without being entangled in the emotional experience of everybody else, when I got to gift myself that time and that space and that amount of grace and unconditional acceptance and love for whatever was going to come up, despite knowing that I was going to piss people off, I was going to trigger people, I was going to annoy people, and I still did it anyways. I still went in the discomfort of accepting my own intuitive guidance that said, hey, babe, guess what? This particular ceremony is about toughening up. It's about staying up all night with your spine erect, singing a particular song in a particular way, in a particular method that I just didn't feel aligned with. That didn't mean I had to call it a bust. That didn't mean I have to say it's not aligned for somebody else. But what I recognize with this gene key 47 is that I carry a big witch wound. As a girl from Massachusetts, I can remember different ceremonies that weren't led in this way. For me, my genetic memory of plant medicine ceremonies always has a medicine woman leading the ceremony. It's all about celebration. It's all about flow. It's all about connection and song and dance and feasting and praying together in a good way. In my memory, my tradition didn't have us sit around a teepee. And so it made sense for my soul, even though there was no intellectual understanding, it made sense for my soul why I was triggered by that teepee, because it was going against my own memory of what my own medicine woman experience was with that medicine. And so, yes, I can create all these narratives. I can be in opposition and I can play the victim, which is what the shadow of these genes always is, as the oppressor, as the person that was oppressed, as whatever narrative I want to play. I can go and I can play that story. But with the understanding of the gene keys, I was able to look and say, this oppression that I'm feeling in my body, it's not mine. It's part of something bigger than me. And what was coming up in my body, and I literally have physical pains to feeling it in my body this week. This is how sensitive I can be. I have physical pains, especially in my ribs, of going through a metamorphosis in my body. And with these physical pains, I can paint a picture that I'm being victimized by the universe. Oh man, these shifts, this awakening journey, it's hard. I'm a victim to my evolution. I can paint that story, or I can know better and say there is a huge shift happening in my body right now that's requiring me to slow down, that's requiring me to rest. And that's what this new moon is. That's for all of us. This is a 28-day cycle. This is when we come to the place that says, we don't see Mother Moon in the sky during a new moon. There's a void. And in that void, this is our opportunity to rest, to come in to union with ourselves and say, what do I need to do to support my highest evolution now? And maybe if you're carrying a collective ancestral wound around suppression of the divine feminine energy on our planet, then you might be tapping into some sacred rage this week. It's so important to be with each emotion without judging it. And for a lot of us that have that patriarchy that we're still dismantling within us, there can be a sacred rage embedded with that, along with a huge amount of grief. Grief for what wasn't, grief for what will never be, grief, as we go through our spiritual awakening. I've had some friends reaching out to me that say, hey, I'm losing all my friends. People that I thought were going to be in my life forever don't want to be my friend anymore. Or I'm realizing that nights out at the bar, they're just not doing it for me anymore. I'm actually waking up with all kinds of anxiety and limited beliefs and negative self-talk when I do something self-sabotaging to my body. And that doesn't feel good to me to do anymore. This is our ascension journey. This is us dragonflies going through these molds, going through these different stages that we keep outgrowing. What we once were comfortable with, we will outgrow that. So last November, I could sit in a ceremony and I could be uncomfortable, but I could sit there in it. This month, I could notice the discomfort and say my sacred boundary says I'm not going to put myself through that amount of discomfort again, because it's not worth it for me, because I've spent so much time in the infrastructure of patriarchy where I've had to toughen up, where I've had to put myself in situations that were not supporting my highest timeline, places where my nervous system was not supported. And so I can go through that model of toughening up, or I could go through a series of softenings, which is how Richard Rudd classifies our gene key journey. It's a series of softenings. And I could say, hey, I support you in this space, but my nervous system doesn't feel supported. There's too much of a trigger that comes up. And at the end of the day, I would rather go in prayer with my sisters this weekend. Please excuse me. And please don't personalize my story, because the most gracious thing that I can do is leave the table when it's no longer serving me. And so this is one of the best ways that we can move out into our lives with this knowledge. It's having grace for the human experience, that maybe you've evolved, maybe you've had these alchemical shifts, maybe you don't even look the same, maybe you don't even talk the same, maybe you don't even have the same relationships anymore, maybe even just the way that you express yourself sexually has changed. Maybe you identify with a different gender. I mean, the alchemical process that you can go in, there's no end to how much you can transmutate. But this is always going to ask you is, how can you be in service of life? How can you be in flow of life rather than being in opposition of life? Instead of telling yourself, projecting a story that you're oppressed by life, why not create a new story that you're transmutated by life, that you are changed and adapted and evolved by life? Life is not happening to you. Life is happening with you. Life is happening for you. We are, when we think about the law of attraction, like attracts like, we attract who we are. And so when we want to align with something bigger, something greater, we need to actually become the person that lives that life. That's the transmutation. If I say, I want to be a medicine woman and I want to hold sacred ceremonies, I can look at this last week and say, but I'm not going to be oppressed by life. I'm going to actually say, what can I transmute here? Let me look into my own shadows. What can I transmute into my gifts? And how I can say from my own earth school, my own human walk, the medicine ceremonies that support me, the medicine ceremonies that I want to conduct, that I want to hold, I'm trauma sensitive. There's a pre and a post integration call. There's consent. There's divine will embedded through the entire ceremony. If you choose to sit here, we welcome you. If you decide you want to lie down over there, I welcome you. So I don't want to conform with the traditions of what the sacred medicine ceremony was before then. And I don't want to say that it's not sacred. I just want to say that I'm transmuting what doesn't align with me and transfiguring a new medicine ceremony that comes from this integrated place that says my soul isn't the same soul that I was millennia ago, where I was sitting around the campfire and doing this. I've evolved. We all have evolved. We do different things now. We have different ways of living. And one of the really important things I believe in my heart, in my truth, is integration, is trauma-informed care. So we're not just putting people in situations and saying, toughen up, but we're actually saying, how can I support you? Does this feel in alignment? Here are some options, if not. And here is a post call to check in on you and say, how you doing? How can I support you? And so it's from my shadow of feeling this oppression that I actually burned through so much collective karma by allowing my nervous system to come into its own place of peace and harmony and enlightenment in my own setting. So I could gather with my sisters. I could do so much so that I could see oh my gosh, I've been in a peyote prayer this whole weekend. I just didn't give myself enough credit to see that I was following the guidance of my intuitive ancestral self that was seeking a different kind of ceremony. And so this transmutation, I think for a lot of us, is saying, how can we take something old and traditional and integrate it by infusing what we know now and weaving something new in with something old? So this is like veneration. This is preservation. We don't take everything from the past and just say, you do it exactly like your mom did it. You do it exactly like your grandma did it. We don't do that. Instead, we say, here's a blueprint for how people did it. And now you feel that in your body. How does that feel? Does that feel supportive? Does that feel in opposition of love? Or does that feel in favor of love? Does that feel in opposition of life? Does that feel in favor of life? Am I telling a story that the world is hard and I'm oppressed by my spiritual awakening? Or am I actually going to say that, wow, the universe is going through such a cosmic shift that I feel it in my body, and it actually changes the way that I operate from life? This gene, all of these genes, what we're going to realize is that there's only a little nuance between one to another when we think about the frequencies. Now, the amino acids, the physiology, there's so much more that will be very specific to each gene. But when we look at the flavor of all of these genes, we're going to look at three things: from the shadow, from the gift, to the siddhi. We're looking at allow the shadow, accept the gift, embrace your divinity. And so allow, accept, embrace. How can you use that this week when you're navigating a wildly uncomfortable situation? Someone cuts you off in traffic, or Mercury retrograde screws up your Zoom and you have to start all over again. Whatever thing you say happens to you, how can you reframe that and say, life is happening with me, for me right now? And instead of saying that I'm oppressed and I'm a victim to life, I can take a sacred pause and I can transmute whatever energy is coming up, because that's my sovereign ability to use breath, to use sound, to use movement, and to use touch to move whatever comes up in your body up and through you. It takes about 90 seconds to feel an emotion from start to finish. You can give yourself 90 seconds to get into your sacred rage. You can give yourself 90 seconds to feel your joy. You can give yourself 90 seconds to feel disdain, to feel sacred rage, whatever it is that comes up. You deserve to give yourself these quiet moments of contemplation, of reflection, to say, how can I respond to life instead of just react to life? Because right now, us Black sheep, these people, spiritual coaches, these people learning the gene keys, these people learning human design, these people studying consciousness, these are the Black sheep. These are the people that said, I have got to create a new way of being, because this way is not cutting it anymore. I don't want to do what my mom did. I don't want to do what my grandma did. There's so many stories of these people that were not in their fullest expression. And that's not what I'm carrying on. I'm going to take the psychic gifts. I'm going to take this passion. I'm going to take all of the beautiful ancestral gifts that they have gifted me with, and I'm going to use them, because I am my ancestors' answered prayer. And so I am going to create a new ceremony, because I'm still creating the ceremony with my ancestors, with my lancestors, with my plancestors. I'm still creating the same ceremony with these energies. but I'm coming from a more embodied place, a more integrated place. And from this integrated place, I am not an oppressor, and I am not oppressed by life. I am not a victim of life. This gift, the gene of 47 gift, these are the wild and almost, like dangerous badasses. This is the sacred wild community. These people say, I'm not putting up with bullshit anymore. I'm going to stand for my social justice. I'm going to advocate for something. I advocate for change. I do what's in my highest integrity. And I only align with things that align with me. If they're not, I don't have to be the oppressor. I don't have to start rumors. I don't have to say negative things about that particular peyote ceremony that happened on this land. But I can say it's not in alignment with my fullest expression, because there's a part of my ego that hears my distorted version, hears in that ceremony, you have to sit like this, you have to stay up all night, you have to sit here to get, if you're going to get sick and you can't get up. I hear rules. I hear patriarchy. And my job in this lifetime is to burn through that collective karma by feeling it, by sitting with that sacred rage. And instead of disrupting my peace and harmony in my body and dysregulating my nervous system to be at a ceremony that I wasn't aligned with, I had the most incredible weekend. I had so many cosmic gifts just to say, good job, you showed up for yourself. You showed up for that 16-year-old version of yourself that wasn't able to show up for herself then. Or you showed up for your 5-year-old self that was powerless and defenseless then. But when you had that sacred rage and you responded instead of reacting, and you listened to that part of you that came up and said, hear me, observe me, notice me. When you did that, you brought your parts back into union. This is yoga. You brought all of yourself back online to say, I love you. I see you. I hear you. I feel you. I wasn't there for you then, but I'm here for you now. And every time that you have that experience with yourself, you yoke all the broken, missing parts of yourself back together. And in that transfiguration, what you learn is that the sum is more than just the equality of its parts, or the total is more than the sum of all of its parts. Because now you have a little golden thread woven in to every single thing that's brought you into this life, into this human journey, into this now moment. And so all of us get to take our golden threads this week and say, this supports the life I'm living, and I can continue to weave this into my story. Or you can say, I am dismantling that patriarchy within me, or whatever it is that's not in alignment with life, that's not in support of love, that's not in divine alignment with source consciousness, that doesn't allow me to surrender into the flow. So this week, I just really, really invite you all to get curious, especially with this dark moon energy coming up in the sign of Virgo. We have a very biblical story on our hands, and we can think about the idea of a man that leaves his throne to come back and experience the trials and tribulations of being human. We can look at this through all kinds of symbolism. Kundalini energy rising on our planet, Adam and Eve, electron, Kundalini awakening, the apple of knowledge of wisdom, Jacob's ladder, the 33 steps of our vertebrae, our heaven, our crown, our hell, our heel, the base of our body. So think about that. We constantly have this ability, this sovereign choice to say, I am fully alive and I'm fully human. When I trust in all that is and I surrender to the flow of the universe, then I can be moved through life as the hollow bone. And anytime that I want to come out of this field of oneness, anytime I want to leave this field of universal love that's always accessible and present, that I can be in at any time, anytime I choose to leave that sovereign bubble of love and grace, I can do that. And I can go down into my lower chakras and I can experience the human journey of misalignments so that I can be knocked back into harmony. So if you want to play a victim, if you want to jump off heaven on earth and go back down, you have that decision. You can do that. You can be oppressed by life. Or if you want to allow life to move through you, you can allow yourself to be moved, alchemically changed, physically, materially, sexually, financially, emotionally, in all of the ways you can allow your body to go through an alchemical process of change. And you can create heaven within, and as within, so without. As we're navigating all of this chaos on the 3D planet, you can choose to stay in 5D. You can be above all of that, or you can come back down and get that nourishment for your soul's curriculum to say, okay, I'm going to be oppressed by life today. I'm going to play the victim story, but I know that if I am a victim, that I'm going to, one way or another, get myself out of that. And so I would just ask you that week, what's the change that you can make to free yourself from the victim story? Maybe you change your environment. Maybe you change your job. Maybe you change the media that you're listening to or watching. Maybe you change some part of your support system. But what changes will support you and who you are and what you're moving towards and becoming? And what things need to peacefully be let go of because they're actually supporting an old version of you that was oppressed. So I am going to go ahead and end this for now because I totally lost track of time with everything that happened. And so sending you so much love and abundance and transfiguration for this whopper of a gene. If you're feeling this as that collective witch wound, I'm right there with you. And as I said, you know, I'm a holistic wellness coach. If you need some more support, feel free to reach out to me. You can always find me and more insights and free resources about the gene keys and other astrology things on my Instagram at Rise Wellness Village, all one word. I'll see you next week. I'm sending you all so much love. Namaste.